questions, we're really asking you to put those questions in the Q&A. It's down on the bottom of your screen where it says Q&A. Just click on that and put your question in there. Crystal and Reggie are going to answer the majority of those questions at the end. So if they're in there, it's easy to find. We don't have to go back in the chat and look for them. So please put your questions in the Q&A so that we can get those answered at the end. There may be some times that they will solicit comments or something like that, and they'll let you know. But for the most part, that's where your questions are going to go. And then just remember that the evaluation for your CEUs goes, the link for that will be in the chat box. We still get people sometimes saying, I can't find that, or will you send that to me? The last 15 minutes of the training, you will see it. And Gabby puts it in several times. So you can just click on it. You can fill it out right then and there. You can copy and paste it into, somewhere else so that you have it. Just make sure you grab that link and you get that done before Friday, the end of day Friday. So, and then she'll get that and get the CEU sent out to you next week. I think, did I cover everything? I think so. I hope you're all excited, and I'm not going to take up any more time. I'm just going to introduce you to our amazing presenters today. We have two for the price of one. And we're so excited to welcome Cristell, Marcial, and Reggie Wilson. They are from Oasis Ascent, and I know Cristell for a very long time. So we go way back, and Reggie's a new friend. And so this is so much fun. They're going to be working together to do our presentation today. So I'm going to turn the time over to them and let them take it from there.
Great. Hey, thank you, Kelly, and welcome to everyone. One thing that I don't think Kelly mentioned is that if you have comments that add to the slide, certainly to what we would love for you to weigh in at that time. We ask that the questions come at the end, but if you do have some comments, go ahead and make those. Feel free. Okay, so first of all, Cristell and I, we are very excited to be here. Cristell and I have worked a lot with transracial adoptions and their parents, and we decided that we think as mental health professionals sometimes we're missing some things when it comes to supporting these transracial adoptions as well as their parents. So our hope today is that by the end of this presentation that we all gain a broader perspective on how to support our families and that are involved in transracial adoptions, and understand the importance of just uplifting and celebrating these adoptees' needs for cultural connection and identity. So, and this is a thing where we're not trying to necessarily put down the adoption process or speak ill of any of that, because we do believe in adoption. We think it's a good thing. We just want to support and help bridge some of the nuances that go on that go on in the background, and where a lot of people just miss, including mental health professionals. So that's our objective today, is that you walk away with some knowledge on how you, as a mental health therapist, maybe a parent, or maybe someone who's thinking about adoption, a child of a different race, how you can do your own work and understand the whole process. So thank you for allowing us to be here. And we've got a slide that we're going to show right now that kind of speaks to our whole presentation. So Cristell, go ahead and play that, please.
My journey in those years, I had to figure out my own path. I felt like I couldn't hang out with the white kids because I'm not white. I couldn't hang out with the black kids because I didn't talk black. I could code switch and I was able to maneuver my way around and get into those social groups, but I had to be on my own a lot. Oh my.
Hi, sweetheart. Oh, it's so good to see you.
I knew from an early age that something was different. I would get made fun of all the time, like, oh, your parents are white, you're black, you talk this way, like, why are you doing that? It didn't really take a toll on me until probably high school. That's when it really started to form my feelings of anger and sadness and me being confused.
It says on the back, Kyle's arrival, 5/19/91.
There's these kids, and there's not enough families out there.
Kyle's parents adopted him from foster care when he was 9 months old. They have a daughter who was also adopted and another son who is biological.
There were ways in which I would find myself being tone deaf. And it would be really, really helpful to stop and learn and not be that tone deaf way again. I agree that there are things that Black parents can give to Black children that white parents cannot give. That doesn't mean white parents can't be parents to Black children. It just means they have to recognize that there are ways that they cannot parent.
Transracial adoption in the US has changed dramatically over the last 2 decades. Adoption from foster care reached an all-time high in 2019, with interracial adoptions from the system increasing by 58% from the early 2000s, while international adoption, the majority of which is interracial, has decreased by about 80% over roughly the same time period.
I wonder. See ya.
I felt unprepared. I felt like I didn't have the tools. What I did then was pour myself into figuring out how should I best parent this child who's going to have a very different experience than what I had and what Tim had.
Robin and Tim adopted their son Ben from Ethiopia when he was 4.
Oh, the dinosaur ate the banana?
Yeah. Eat that banana.
They also have 3 biological daughters.
Did Lily teach you that?
With Ben, there are a few extra things you need to be aware of because of your race. Things will happen at school, say, and I'll ask him questions where I'm trying to deduce without implying whether I think there was any kind of implicit bias going on, and he says, no. His perspective is still very innocent despite being 15.
No, Ben, I'm disabled.
It's not how you look at other people, it's how they look at you. So that's what we're trying to get through.
I have a friend in particular who I reached out to shortly, I think, after Michael Brown was killed. I didn't want any Black man to have to do the work for me, but I needed to hear from somebody who had the lived experience. Was I doing it right? Should I say something? Should I not say something?
I was just like, whatever, and I would just like push her away, just because I was still a little young, you know. I didn't really understand why they would do that and all that stuff. But now that I'm older, I understand a lot more.
It matters that he is a Black man and that he understands that color is seen. And to say that all people are the same or that, I don't see color, it denies someone's experience. It denies the power component that's involved in racism that's very, very present in our culture, in our country still.
For Kyle personally, like some other interracial adoptees, finding his birth mom was key to shaping his identity.
What's the word, Squidward?
What's going on now?
Hey, everybody says hi. Mom, dad say hi. My adoptive parents, they passed on so many great qualities. At the same time, they're not my birth parents. And so it's different.
Kyle would not have been happy any other way. You can't hide from your child that part of themselves.
She's African American, and I can talk to her in more depth about police brutality or being Black in America because she gets it. I describe it as you're doing a puzzle and you're missing one piece. Finally, you find it and you put it together and you see the picture. That's exactly what it was like.
Okay, thank you, Cristell. So let's just start by talking about what is a transracial adoption. Basically, a transracial adoption is just adoption of a child of a different race than the home that it's that they will be going into. And so, you know, there's many types of adoption. And so Black children into white homes is probably the most common. And I'll just, Cristell, you want to weigh in on the other adoptions?
Yeah, so with our presentation, we're focusing more on just direct adoption, not so much into foster care. That can be a kind of its own thing too. And we'll go into this more as far as like why we're focusing so much on the transracial adoptions and at times even more into adoptees who are Black. And just to start off with a little bit of the history. So the first Adoption of Children Act was passed in 1851. And this was super important just because it was the first law that focused on the best interests of the child. And it was focused on a judge actually being able to determine that the parents were going to be able to provide what the child needed. Now we can just think about what that looked like before and just maybe what the process was from there. But this was kind of the first thing. And as Reggie said, there are, you know, the different types of adoption from whether it's international or just from state to state. With the families we've worked with, there really has been kind of that whole mix, including from foster care too. And with transracial adoptions, it can also be called an interracial adoption or a cross-racial adoption.
Yeah. And so, you know, the first transracial adoption occurred in 1948. And if you can think about, you know, what was going on in the nation around 1948, okay, let's just stop and think about that. And then you talk about a transracial adoption. I can't imagine how difficult that was for that family, number one, and that child. Number two. So we've come a long way, right? But again, we're still we're still having questions about transracial adoptions. And so the other statistic that you see here, 90% of transracial adoptions involve children of color adopted by white parents. And then you can look at the other statistics there. 46% of adoptions are transracial for Latino children. And then the most, like I said before, the most common is, of course, Black children into white families. Okay.
This was also that first transracial adoption. It was a white child adopted by white parents.
Mm-hmm. When we talk about Native Americans, there's there's a whole, it's a whole different thing in terms of the laws, because Native Americans really their first option is in the tribe, which I believe is really good. But when we talk about Native Americans, there's a difference there. So let's go to that next slide there, Chris. Okay, so since we talked about since we talked about the first or the most common adoption being Black children into white homes, the National Association of Black Social Workers came out with a statement and basically saying that Black children are more equipped to deal with racism and discrimination and things like that raised in Black homes. And so that makes a difference there. We're not saying that we're down on adoptions of Black children in white homes. We're just saying that that they're better equipped to handle racism and some of the other discrimination practices that exist in the world. And so, and then they develop a total sense of themselves and develop a sound projection into their future. And so one of the other things that we talk about is, you know, why do we think that Black children are more, or Black parents do not necessarily adopt, and that there's a whole segment on that which we're going to talk about, but but my answer to that is Black parents do see race, they do see color, they understand the issues that come along with adoption, and so we as National Association of Black Social Workers discuss what are some of the barriers that keep Black parents from adopting, and there's a whole list of them, starting with the strict requirements sometimes that adoption agencies have that are sometimes biased towards more wealthy and more well-to-do families, and so so I'm not sure if it's if it's the fact that Black parents don't really want to adopt Black children, but maybe some of the criteria is maybe needs to be adjusted. For instance, income levels, educational achievements, and residential areas where people live are all kind of based towards kind of that white middle class standard. Excuse me. So so when we talk about these things, we have to look at adjusting some of these laws and even looking into things like kinship placements, because Black families tend to take on their kin, and so so we have to have them recognize that the kinship is a practice common to the Black community, where extended family members can raise their own children in the same raised home. Let's see here. Okay, so that's kind of like a summary of where the National Association of Black Social Workers, where they stand, but also it speaks to some of the biased requirements that are out there for adoption. So, Crystal, do you have anything else to add to that, or you want to?
Not to that one.
Okay, all right. Let's move to the next slide.
Yeah, so just to go into more just with the adoption rates in the US and just other statistics, just to give everybody a little bit of background. We're sure some other people probably who are just watching the presentation have more insight. So this is one of the parts where we'd love to hear your thoughts, especially if you work in this or if you had more experience in it. From what we found, it looks like 70% of adoptive parents in the US are white. And so that's where kind of the other statistic comes in of 90% of adoptions that are transracial include white adoptive parents. And again, somebody, all of us in this presentation probably know somebody who is adopted. And just to give you kind of that ratio, 1 in 35 children in the US are adopted. And if we think about that in the perspective of classroom sizes, we know they think they've gotten smaller and smaller, which is probably better for the kids. But even in that, it could be one child in one classroom that is adopted, or one child in every 2 classrooms that is adopted. And obviously transracial adoptions are becoming more common. And so this could also just be another factor that we can look into as we're looking at children and just adults as they grow up who were adopted. We have also found that there seems to be a preference for white babies to be adopted first. And so they tend to be adopted first, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's just something interesting that we found as we were looking into this topic. And we'll get into why I don't say that that's necessarily a bad thing. And as we look into more of the interviews that we did with the families that we have worked with, something that was really common was that the main reason why they had adopted was due to infertility. And we also found that around 2 million couples in the US are waiting to adopt. With the families that we worked with, the next statistic underneath that was also pretty standard for us, that the children that we work with, they were adopted earlier in childhood. So far, it looks like really just after 8 years old, it's really rare for the kids to be adopted. Anything you want to add, Reggie?
No, well, let's move on to that next slide. So, um, so this slide is just as I said before, Crystal and I have worked extensively with a number of transracial adoptions and here at Oasis and other places, and so these are some part of the interviews when we put together this slide. Interviews from parents that have adopted, and so. Um, um, Basically, they talk about the adoption process, that it wasn't, they felt that it wasn't really friendly. Um, like Crystal mentioned, the number one reason for them to adopt was, infertility, and they wanted a family. The families that I interviewed were really wanting to a family, like almost an immediate family. And so when they went into it, they weren't thinking about race, that it wasn't a problem. And so they felt that the application process was was kind of odd because um, they were given this application, and it was lengthy, very detailed, and they were often asked questions like, what did they want their child to look like? They talked about the race, white, black. They talked about you know, boy, girl, of course, but they talked about, they had a whole list of races there, and so the families that I spoke with didn't want to be excluded, and so they marked everything. And so they just felt like they were, like, was almost ordering from a menu or something. And so that process was really, really hard. And so once they got, they went through the process, they were interviewed, questioned, and then called back to say they have a child available. But they felt like there wasn't enough education, and they felt like they were just kind of rushed out the door. And I don't know if there's any parents in our panel here that maybe felt that same thing if they were adopted. But one of the things that they talked about was, their kids when they first adopted them as infants, they were cute, and they were, everybody commented on them, with them, and it's a cute family and everything that they dreamed, right? And then when they hit early childhood, it's when they started experiencing some of the harder questions. One of the questions that one of this young child said to his mother as they were walking down the street, they were holding hands, and she said she'll never forget this because she didn't know how to answer it. And it was, he was holding his mother's hand, and he asked her, "Mom, when will my skin change to white like yours?" And she said that for the first time, she was stumped and didn't know how to answer that. And so, and then later in their teenage years, they started seeing a lot of behavioral issues, acting out, and they attribute it to, ADHD, or maybe it was the fault of the birth parents, and so, um, going through therapy and other programs. And then by their teenage years, they realized that they had dropped the ball, because they realized that there were other things going on in the background that they were totally unaware of and totally unprepared to deal with. One of the when they realized that, one of the parents told me they were in Chicago at a park, and for the first time, looking at their children playing with these other children, they turned their heads, they turned back, and they said for the first time they felt kind of this doom, because they felt that they lost their children, because they were playing with the park with other children that looked like them. And so it was really a situation that they've never felt before. And so realizing that and understanding that they dropped the ball, they started seeking help, and that's when they come to people like Cristell and I and some of the other therapists that may be on the panel.
And just to add a little bit more, and again, this is a part where we'd love to hear more thoughts from everybody who's listening and watching right now. With the families that I worked with, one comes to mind with the process of adoption. Mom described that, they waited, they actually looked into 2 different states to be able to adopt. And, finally they get a call, they're going to be able to adopt a child. And it was a 3 or 4 day window from the call to when they needed to go meet them. And so from there, a caseworker met with them one time after that, but really it was, I wouldn't even call it a paragraph of a description of their child's background. It was just, mom and dad, this is where they're coming from, and that's kind of it. And so from there, they had no other follow-up as far as education on how to help their child as they grow up and start to ask these difficult questions. And another family, I think they only had maybe an hour of kind of like what transracial adoptions are. And that was just very much, all transracial adoptions, not necessarily the race that their child was and what may come up with that. And also just to give a little bit of background about Oasis, we're a short-term stabilization program. And so by the time we're working with the teens, they are in their teenage years. And so there may be other mental health concerns that may be going on, or just other crises that they finally may be experiencing. But we're noticing that this also tends to come up in their mental health, and it's just another factor that is impacting the family, whether they have siblings or not, whether they're biological to the parents. It's just kind of another factor that we tend to address while they're with us. And every family is kind of at a different spot. Once we get to those teenage years, sometimes parents are really aware that it's impacting their child. And sometimes it's the child who doesn't really know how to word it, but they know there's something that they need to be able to learn how to communicate with their parents.
Yeah, and I would just add that for some of the parents that I interviewed, that's what they said, is that we don't really see color, and they have all the great intentions, and a statement like that can really unintentionally invalidate their child's experience with race and identity. So I just wanted to make that clear as well. So.
And actually, as we looked into it more, children can identify their own race just even from 5 years old. And so it can be really invalidating for anybody to say, we don't see color, when the child is recognizing their own too. But we'll go into it.
All right, so this next slide is from one of my favorite sitcoms, Modern Family, and it's I hope you enjoyed it. It's just it's kind of a lighthearted approach to these 2 fathers who are trying to support their adopted daughter and celebrating her race. But maybe some of you have seen it before, but we're gonna show you this so that you kind of get an idea of sometimes how parents kind of clumsily with good intention try to let their child know that they support them. So go ahead and let's roll that.
So good.
I want a cheeseburger.
This is a special soup called pho.
You told me not to say that word.
It is delicious. This is the food of your people.
Can I get you anything else?
Actually, we're just trying to teach our daughter about your country. And as I'm saying that, I'm hoping you're from Vietnam.
I was born there.
So was Lily.
Oh, it's a beautiful country. My family still lives there.
I hate Vietnam.
Lily, honey, we don't hate.
I hate Vietnam.
Hey, we need just a second. Lily, that was rude.
I want to go home.
No, it's important that you celebrate the culture of your ancestors. You are Vietnamese.
No, I'm not. I'm gay. I'm gay.
Honey, no, you're not gay. You are just confused. Oh my God, what is wrong with me? It's like oh, please, we have tons of lesbian friends.
Odd that you would reference our friends and not us. Also gay.
We should just go.
No, nobody's going anywhere until she finishes the whole soup.
No, Gloria, it's fine.
No, it's not fine. That's the problem with this country. Nobody cares where they come from. They just want cheeseburgers and bread school, and they have forgotten about Colombia.
Okay, I can't help but feel that maybe you're bringing something to the table that's possibly not at all about Lily.
I think you're right. It's just that I feel like I'm losing my children to America. They're just going to grow up and become boring old white people.
Oh, most of our friends are white, actually. Okay, can everybody just calm down and go back to their own conversations? Just thank you.
Hey, what's going on with you?
Manny has forgotten most of his Spanish, and Joe, I'm sure he's not even going to learn it. I know this is silly, but I just don't like feeling like I'm so different from the rest of my family.
Oh, honey.
It feels so lonely.
Wait just a second, Lily. Is that why you want to be gay, to be more like your daddies?
Oh, honey, no, the three of us are a family, even though we come from different places. You know, you were born in Vietnam, and I grew up in a city, and even though he never talks about it, your daddy grew up on a farm.
Yeah. The point is that we're a family because we love each other.
Okay.
And you know what? You just caused a scene in a restaurant, and you can't get any more like your daddies than that.
Maybe I'll just take Manny and Joe to Colombia this summer.
I think that's a great idea. I really think that keeping in touch with your heritage only enriches our culture.
Absolutely. I think we would all be better off if people would go back to where they came from.
I'll pull the car around.
Yes.
Okay, so somebody I saw in the chat said this is pretty funny. Yeah, I mean when we watch something like that, you know, it is funny. It's and I think that that's what we see most of when with parents who are actually once they realize it, they're trying to kind of get to they're trying to support, you know, and their kids just look at them like, you know, this is crazy. What are we doing? It's almost embarrassing, right? So again, we're trying to help parents understand that what they may have really good intentions, the best intentions out there, and nobody can fault them for that. Nobody can say that they don't know what they're doing. We want to support them. We want to add to this what they're trying to do. I was just thinking about this. I wonder if these two dads, if they had had some of the training that we're going to be talking about later, how this would maybe end up. I just think that they've got good intention and they need some support, right, and some education, right? So, okay, let's move on. Cristell, do you have anything to add to that?
No, to that one, it really is just like they're doing their best, they're doing what they can, and thinking to some of the families that we worked with, given that maybe some of them had a 1 hour information video or training with somebody, they really were doing what they could, right? Like that's something that they could access, just going to a restaurant, trying to find somebody that they could connect with, and have their daughter talk to them. All of that was, again, good intentions and not necessarily bad. It was just what they had access to, which is one of the points that we're making, that a lot of times the families just don't have access to more information or ways to connect. So
yeah, and I'll just say, leading up to this next slide, is that this is Lily. She's young. I would think that she's probably 5 or 6 years old, maybe 7 in this clip. So this next slide is about an adult who was transracially adopted. And I want you to see, what I want you to notice is the level of, first of all, the level of maturity, the difference there between Lily and this other an adult, and the conversations that he has with his white brother, and the kind of the awareness that just pops out, where Lily has a hard time, identifying her race. Like, I hate Vietnam, and then how these two connect. So go ahead and roll that.
I'm gonna try and paint you a picture, okay? I started going to this support group for transracial adoptees. They explained this term to me, ghost kingdoms. It's like an alternate reality in your mind where you imagine the life you would have had if you were never adopted. And I realized that I've had this ghost kingdom my entire life. I just never had a name for it. Since I never knew who my birth parents really were,
Randall?
I imagined that the nice librarian from the neighborhood library and the black meteorologist on the local news were my parents.
The guy we always used to pray to for snow days.
Yep.
Yeah. And the librarian. She always let you check out more books than you were allowed.
She did. They were the only two adults that I consistently saw that looked like me. Now, this group told me that this is a pretty common thing. But back then, I didn't know that. So picture me, Kev. Picture me at 5, having the same type of fantasy that a lot of kids have, but thinking I was doing something bad. But I wasn't. I was just going to an imaginary place that was supposed to be just for me. But that's not the full picture. Because I could never fully escape into my fantasy. Because I felt too guilty. Because I loved you guys too much.
You know, it's actually perfect weather. Yeah, no, it's perfect weather.
Perfect weather for who?
For football. Steelers always have an advantage in the snow. Hey, bud, come on.
Come here, bud. You're right next to me.
I couldn't even create a fantasy world without you guys, Kev. Do you know how unusual that is?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Randall. I'm sorry there were things I didn't see when we were growing up. And I'm sorry there are things I still don't see. You are my brother. And I love you.
Or we pause that one.
Yeah. Okay, so again, here we have an adult who has been adopted into this family and is for the first time having a serious conversation with his white brother about what it was like him growing up in a home where of a different race. And so, and then the brother saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't realize." It's powerful. He uses this term "ghost kingdoms," and I want to talk about that for a minute because this term "ghost kingdom" I can relate. I was not adopted, but I grew up in a single parent household, and I had a family across the street that were really a good influence on me. And they happened to be Black, and they had a couple of kids, and I remember thinking that I belonged to that family. I wish that that was my family, even though loved my family. My mom was a great mother and still is. But they had a father there that was there, and I can remember, I never had a word for it, but I just remember, and he was a mentor of mine. He was in med school and he drove a really cool car, and I always thought, man, when I get old enough to drive it, that car's going to be mine. But he was a big influence in my life. He always asked me how I was doing. He always asked me what about my future, what I wanted. I mean, he was everything that we would want in a mentor or a father. And that's where my I just lost. Are you guys there?
We can hear you.
Okay, my power just went out just momentarily. And I panicked. So anyway, so I can really look at this, and it does something to me. And so I just wonder, and I want you guys to sit back and just think about what it was like, because he talked about they were the librarian and the meteorologist were the only two people that were consistent in his life that looked like him. We call those mirrors, and that they were mirrors for him because they look like him, right? And so and then he talked about the guilt. So I want you guys to stop and just think about the guilt that maybe some of these children have when they see what's in front of them, and they know they should be grateful, and they are grateful, and yet they think about some of the things that they don't have, that most people of their race do have. And so, do I talk about that to my family because now I look ungrateful? How do I talk about it? And what do I talk about? And for him, it's the first time, and I don't know how old he is. And I see Janae Goodrich. Thank you for that comment, saying that she grew up in a transracial home and she has felt this before. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. How do you navigate your own feelings when you know you've got this family who love you, but maybe who don't really understand how you're feeling, right? And he's got to be what, maybe mid-20s, I don't know, early 30s. And for the first time, he's letting his brother know this, and the brother is just like blown away, like, whoa, really? I didn't know this. So think about that. And what I love is the embrace at the end, which is validating for Randall, right? It's validating. So so a lot of times though, if you think about it, if you're young, you don't have the verbiage to kind of have this kind of conversation. All you know is I don't feel good, and you don't look like me, and you're, and it goes on and on and on and on. You don't know how to say it. You try to say it, but it comes out maybe ungrateful, and that's how the parents take it. And then they turn it back and say things like, I've done this for you, and I've done this, I rescued you and I saved you, and what would have happened if you had been, if we weren't there for you. And it's all good, but we need to put some context to it. We need to help parents learn to understand it, and we need to help our children have a voice. And it doesn't have to be destructive. It's just about learning. So, Crystal, if you have anything to add to that, that's great too.
No, I love that Janae commented on it too. And I know when we were putting this together, we hadn't heard that term before. But as we talk to more and more people about transracial adoptions, it becomes more common. And so I wonder if Janae had heard that term before, or, sometimes once we say it, it's like, oh my gosh, that's what it was. I didn't know what it was. I just knew what it felt like. I just knew what the experience was. And it's something that stands out often when we talk to transracial adoptees. Whether it's that detailed of like, I have these two people, or like this family that I picture, or just, like, oh, I kind of pictured myself there one time. So.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So, one of the things that popped out in this picture, and I want to just talk to you guys about it, is I want you to take a look at the picture and just tell me what you think, or just think about it to yourself. First thing that popped out at me was, you got mom, dad, and they're just smiling. They got their teeth showing. Then you got the child who's got a smile, and a sign that says life is beautiful, but you don't see any teeth. Like he's just smiling. I don't know if that was intentional. It could be just very innocent, but it certainly speaks to what we're talking about, right? Like, who knows what's going on in the background for this child? Who knows what's in the back of his head, right? But the life is beautiful sign, yeah, that's what the world wants us to think. That's what the parents want us to think. I'm sure this young man is helping fulfill mom and dad's dream. You're happy. We're a family, and all is well. So, yeah.
That's something that Reggie and I talked about, as you said, we're not sure if that was intentional or not.
Yeah.
But it did, like, just remind me of some of the families I've worked with and their teens, just in seeing their body language around their siblings versus their parents, or if they do have those mirrors and we get to see them interact with them. Again, the mirrors being people that look like them or that they can relate to based on their race, or just being a minority. That's something that, like just the smiles, or like the way that they joke, or the way that they hug each other. Those are things that pop up as we're talking about like their communication, as they start to build trust, if that's something that they are working on. We see in this picture, they're all close together, they're willing to take a picture. Kid isn't super like far away from parents, but it's just like that little bit of a difference that we see, like genuine smiles and just kind of a little bit of hesitancy that, Reggie and I may be like reading into too much, but it's just like something that came up and I think represents some of the things that we've seen with the families we've worked with.
Yeah. So, so let's talk about the adoptees experience. We talked about loss of identity and culture. Yeah. With adoption, there is loss, and when we talk about the transracial adoption, you got to add identity and culture in there, because parents just don't know. It's not their fault. They grew up with not being involved in any type of understanding about other folks' identity or culture, right? So that's part of it. And then the adoptee also feel fear. Like, think about that. Like, it plays a major role because it silences the adoptive children, and they may be afraid of, let's say, just rejection. Like worrying that sharing their true feelings could result in possibly being emotionally, physically, or otherwise rejected by their adopted parent, and unintentionally, right? I mean, because they're just fearful, like, what would happen, because they've been told by not just their parents but by other people, like, you're so lucky, that you were adopted. You were so lucky that your parents brought you out of a situation where you could have not grown up in a way that's healthy and productive. Who knows? They may be feeling like, that denial of their feelings might be just cast aside, right? Dismissed or invalidated. I mean, those things certainly happen. I mean, if you think about, if we've got therapists on the panel, think about maybe how many times you've had maybe a transracial adoptive family in your office, and sometimes how parents just kind of just brush off some of their child's comments, and deny that they feel the way that they feel. I mean, I've been in situations like that. And then what about just like anger? Maybe my parents will be mad at me if I voice my concerns, right? Maybe I don't want to provoke a conflict, within my family. I mean, those things happen. They're true, right? And then what about just fear of abandonment? that their honesty about their feelings might lead to them losing their family over again, right? Um, there's also shame. We talk about that. So they may feel shameful that you know that they're not grateful, like they should be grateful. So anyway, those things happen. Those things happen. So anyway, adoptees, they do need time to process their feelings, what's going on, and understanding. So they may not know, like I said before, they may not have the language, they may not, or the awareness of, or how to even like articulate their feelings, right? So, um, and we also want uh, to most, let's see, this is, and I really like these comments. Is there a way, maybe, Kelly, that we can kind of address those? Because they kind of pop up and then they disappear. But
Like Jeanette and
yeah, I really love those. I would love to.
Sarah, you guys are welcome to unmute and share a little bit more, because one, I see the resources and we'd love to highlight that at the end too, because
Yeah.
barrier. But just even to comment on what Jeanette said, and please unmute yourself if you'd like to add more, but just with the part of, if the more common ones are kind of the, business side of adoption, that can be going into the guilt for the children too. I know some of the adoptees I've worked with, they'll say, if I compare myself to what my life would have been like, I don't want to live like that, right? Like they recognize some of the things that they have now because they were adopted, and that doesn't take away from the hardships that they are still experiencing, and that they would have wanted other parts of living within, their family of origin or adoptive or biological parents. So it's both, and yeah, like somebody else said, it's easier said than done, or it's not as simple as just saying like you're lucky. Yeah, if you guys want to unmute, feel free.
Yeah. Yeah, feel free to jump in. And then again, adoptees experience, if you think about it, you know, their use of slang, or specific language patterns may be seen as, you know, as disrespectful, and maybe adopted parents want to cover that up, or even certain music, rap music particularly, adopted parents sometimes want to cover it up. Um, um,
And can we, this is Jeanette. I'm glad to hear that Children's Service is in the adoption business still, because for a while they quit.
yeah,
They actually were doing groups, which is great, but they were not in the business, but it's good to know. Anyway, some of the adoptive kids I've worked with, that early in my career, there was a lot of foster kids that were in foster care because as teens, because the adoptive parents found it very easy to give up on them.
yes, yes.
And that's no longer as easy to do now because you have to pay for them to
Thank
be in
goodness.
foster care. But it but that whole factor of being grateful to be adopted was really an issue. And then the other thing that might be good that I'd like you guys to talk about is sometimes these children meet their birth families and they're
Yeah,
embarrassed about them. That
yeah,
they are embarrassed about where they came from. So
yeah,
how do you
yeah,
help them mediate feeling guilty about the family they're adopted into and guilty about the family they came from?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
thank you.
yeah. Thank you, Jeanette. Yeah, there's. I mean, we'll get into that, but you're absolutely right. There's. I'm so glad that the laws have changed with that, because I saw a lot of it as well, I'm grateful for that. Um, so being able to, I mean, you talked about the birth families and things like that, and I think that there is that one of my families actually that have that exact scenario happen, and what happened was it gave the child closure. He wanted to meet them, And when he met them, he was unimpressed. And at the same time, it gave him some closure to, and the permission to move on. And if that wouldn't have happened, Jeanette, if they didn't allow that, then he would still be wondering. He'd still be wanting to meet them, and it may be causing problems because the adoptive parents are not wanting that to happen. So thank you for bringing that up. Cristell, is there any other? Are we missing anything on that slide?
Not on this one. I love the comments because we're going to go into that, especially our last comment that we got. So
okay, so this next slide is when we first put this together, Josh Doyle, who's an educational consultant, worked with us on this, and I want to give a shout out to him. He really helped a lot. But what he does is he helps families find programs for their children, appropriate programs for their children. And what he has always faced when it comes to transracial adoption clients, he's had to have what he calls these hard conversations with parents. And so, he shared this quote by James Baldwin that said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." And he's speaking to the hard conversations with parents. Like, color matters. You need to do more to submerge yourself in your child's culture. And if you're planning on adopting a Black child, that Black child should not be the first person that's Black to ever come to your home. So he is really talking about these hard conversations. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, with the last comment that we got, right? Like these 2 slides ago, those are things that all adoptive children may experience. And yet we're highlighting the transracial adoptions, right? And so going into that a little bit more detailed, there are these specific things that they may experience that adoptees who are the same race as their adoptive parents may not experience. One of those is name changes. Again, that might be something that comes up in general, but there are some things that just sound different based on the language that may have been spoken primarily by biological parents. Just to protect the names of the children that we have worked with, I can use my own. Even when Kelly, introduced us, I just like light up every time I hear somebody actually say my name the right way. With it being Cristell Marcial, it's actually for Cristell, it's Cristell, right? If we actually say it in Spanish. It's my choice to just have people say Cristell instead, and I'm totally fine with it. But just kind of thinking about the adoptees that we're working with, or that or may come to me at some point, thinking about their specific names that they may have lost or have chosen to change. I know some of the families that have adopted, if their children are maybe even 5 or 6 years old, they'll ask them, do you want to keep your name? This is kind of an opportunity for you to change it if you would like to. It seems it's really common for adoptees to keep their name as a middle name and then add in a new one as their first name. But sometimes these things may be lost of, if it's a Hispanic name, it's going to be George instead of Jorge, like things like that. They're the same name, but just in a different language. And that is a little thing that they may feel is a loss later on. And if they don't, that's okay, but it is something that they can experience. Another part may be that they get comments about not looking like their adoptive parents. And granted, not everybody looks like their parents. I was actually telling Reggie as we were putting this together that I would get questioned on this all the time with my mom. I don't know why, around 6 or 7 years old, people would just question her and say, like, that's not your child, like, who are you babysitting for? And I would just cry. And I was super sad, and I just didn't understand why people were making those comments. And that was actually, my mom. She's like biologically related to me, and yet it still affected me that much. with the kids I've worked with, this comment of "you don't look like your parents" is the most tame one. They have actually gotten a lot of really disrespectful and flat out mean comments about not looking like their parents, or just commenting on it frequently every time that they were picked up from school, or if their parents came to school events. It was something that came up every time. And so again, even biological families may not look like each other, but it's probably going to be less common for them to hear it. And it was just another added stress that the adoptees experienced when they would have, these fun activities at school or with friends, maybe even just dropped off. They're questioned on, why are you with that person? Like, who is that adult in your life? When to them, it's just mom and dad. And it's just little things that they get all the time. We've mentioned this part a lot of parents claiming that they're colorblind. And as I mentioned earlier, kids, even at 5 years old, can start to recognize their own race. So although this comes with good intentions, it's something that is already, showing some invalidation for the child who is experiencing and noticing all of these things that are different about them and their adoptive parents. And this may put them in the role of being an educator. Sometimes with things that come up with them, they might not even know how to explain it to their parents, like microaggressions. If they're around school, or if they're just somewhere out in the community and they're called a certain name, or if they get treated a certain way, coming back to their adoptive parents, they may not know how to describe what happened or why it happened. They just know that it did. And, of course, a lot of the times we'll want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And we'll hear parents say, they didn't mean that. They probably just, were trying to do this, or trying to, also help you out in a different way. And the adoptees kind of get left with this feeling of being unheard, not being understood, and just needing to continue to educate their parents about their experience as a minority. So this is why we're focusing so much on the transracial adoptions. And these are the little things that they may experience that same race adoptions may not. And as Reggie mentioned earlier, if your adoptee child is the first person to enter your home that is that race, it's probably something we need to look at. They need to have those mirrors close within their community, close within their family, friends, or just family in general. It's something that can be really helpful. And I'm seeing some more comments and I love how long they are. Let's see if Linda, if you want to unmute and add to that. You're welcome to.
So much of what you guys are saying is so impactful for me. I'm a mom I'm married actually to a man from Tonga. And so my children do not even look like me. But then we've adopted 9 other children. And I've had many experiences with my own biological children that are a lot like this, where kids will say, like I took my children to the grocery store and they're like, oh, your kids are so so cute and whatever. And I'm like, well, I actually have the the stretch marks to prove these are mine, but people had a hard time with it. And then towards the end of our adoptions, I actually ended up adopting 2 biological they were siblings, but they were Caucasian. And it's interesting that we go out and no one asks a single thing, but all of my other children, we've had kind of these identity issues. But even as a mom with, my adopted kids, I would always have to carry a picture of my children with me, because I've had police officers stop me and have questions about my kids. I've had my children talk about racial profiling that I had no idea, and these are my biological children. So there is so much ingrained in all of this that I just want to open the gates and just let's talk, but there is so much involved in it. But I do want to just testify that the adoption is an amazing process. It's very, very hard and it's very difficult. And there's a lot of things that as a young mom, I never would have thought would have been considerations. But I am so grateful for the kids that I have and the growth that I've had because of my children.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I like that you gave the kind of the opposite example of, we did look into that a bit, and we keep focusing on just like white parents with racial minority children, just because that's what seems to be most common. Yet on the opposite side, if it was a minority adopted parent and white child, that would be something that would come up. Other people are questioning like, hey, are these actually your parents? Like, who are you with? Do you need help? And just kind of questioning the adults more rather than the children, which again is going to impact both of them, because the child is also seeing their parent be questioned and they don't really like know why, because that's again mom and dad to them. So yeah, no, I just, even the things that you have to think about, as you shared about needing to keep pictures with you just to show and prove, that's not something that you should need to do. And parents are probably, or people in the community are probably just trying to be helpful or just trying to keep children safe in general, when really it's just kind of adding a bit of stress to them and their experience of just being out and about with their family and their parents. With our setting of being in a short-term residential program, a lot of what we see, unfortunately, is that the children working with minorities is really uncommon when they're at home. And so once they come into a residential setting, all of a sudden they're exposed to more mirrors. And that's not a fault to them or a fault to their parent. It's just kind of the way that it has worked. With Oasis, we have kids from all over the country, just because Utah tends to have more residential programs. And thankfully our staff and our team is pretty diverse. And so, they come and they get to like just have a little bit more diversity while they're in treatment. And it's something that a lot of parents have actually voiced that they're grateful for, that, they're not having to question any of that. If they need to learn how to do something specific to them, then we're able to provide that, and we will make sure that they have what they need, like even as something as like haircuts or braids, things like that. If the child is Black and they need something like that, we'll make sure to provide it. One of the examples that always comes up in my mind as I'm working with the families that we do is a mom and a daughter that I worked with. Again, with our setting being a residential program, sometimes we don't meet the parents right away when their child comes in, and it'll just be emails and calls back and forth for maybe the first 24 hours until we can set up a family session and all get together through a video call. And if they're local, they'll come in person. But this family that I was working with, mom and I are emailing back and forth, setting up everything. And finally we get on the call. We're talking about the program, talking about history of the family and their child. And before we go get their child for the session, mom just goes, she meant this in the best way. And I hope it comes out right to everybody who's here in the presentation. But she just said to me, can I just say, like, I'm just so happy that you're not blonde and blue-eyed with a pixie cut. And she was the sweetest mom, and she didn't mean anything bad about it. And if that falls into you, that's totally fine too. But her daughter is Black, and so she was just really happy that her daughter, wasn't going to be working with somebody again and again and again who may not be able to relate to her. And this is something we'll go into a little bit more later. That in itself didn't mean that I was going to be competent working with her daughter. So that's where I say, that's not something that she meant as a bad thing, and I'm not repeating it to be as a bad thing. It's just something that challenged me to think about, yes, I am a minority. This child is also a minority, and I'm not Black, she's not Hispanic. And so we have different experiences in our lives that mean that I need to do my work outside of her sessions, outside of any time that I'm spending with the family directly, to make sure that I'm educated and that I'm aware of factors that may be impacting this family and this child, to make sure I'm actually providing the services that they'll need. So it was just something that was kind of funny that mom said, so directly, and she was very cute and just kind of bubbly saying it that way. But daughter also voiced her feedback on that later on, just, like, hey, like, my therapist is a minority, or my therapist is Latina, like, it's really cool. And she also had other therapists who were great in the past. So it was just different things that we may not think about. as far as like, if you find a good therapist, that's great. But just making sure that you actually know what's going on with your client as far as like the racial factors, that's something that will just only help their success and their treatment and their own therapy if you're a therapist. And if you're working at a school, everywhere else, just being aware of those different factors will also be important. Another thing just is the kids are growing up and have different experiences in schools or even as they start to work. Again, going into those microaggressions, they may not think about is just opportunities that may come up. I know even for me, going into like senior year of high school, I was very involved in like a ballroom team and was taking honor classes and concurrent enrollment classes. And I had to get my schedule approved by a counselor. And when I went, they just asked me like, oh, like, are you sure you're going to be able to handle this? When, I knew other friends in those classes that weren't questioned like that. And so this may be something that comes up for the transracial adoptees that, they may be questioned on like their abilities, just based on other people's biases, and they need to have a place to be able to come back. And so that's why we have this other quote right here. I'm not sure if we had gotten it from somebody else or if it was Josh Doyle, the educational consultant that we worked with too, that said it, but it was just to ignore the reality is to gaslight the child. Just saying like that didn't happen, it's just going to create more harm and can create more conflict, as we've noticed. So
yeah. Kelly, it looks like your hand is raised there.
I was just going to comment, as I've been reading about people's experiences and stuff, and it helped me, or it reminded me that I am close to a family who they've adopted 5 children, because they never were able to have any of their own. They adopted 5 children, and 2 are Black, 2 are white, and 1 is Latina. And from day one, these children see that they are not all the same, that there is a difference. And so they just grow up. They have done such a good job of helping them, to explore whatever they want to explore about their culture or where. I mean, these parents are just very open to the fact that, yeah, you're different and let's talk about it, and let's embrace it. And
sure,
it's just been an amazing thing to watch. They've just been really good about it. And
what I like about that is the acknowledgement, that's the important piece. So okay, we can go on to that next stage or next slide. Okay, so when we talk about adoption, there is loss in adoption. I don't, it's not about, no matter how successful it looks from the outside, there's still loss. There's a loss of identity. There's loss of adopted parents. There's a grieving process that takes place with not only with the adopted child, but also sometimes with the parents, right? So when we talk about denial, so many adoptive parents initially deny that that there's even an issue, and that they deny that race is going to be a factor, but also that denial that even white privilege was not enough to protect their child from the world, right? And we'll get into some of that that word white privilege, because I know that can sometimes create some thoughts or questions. But when I talk about white privilege, going back to one of the interviews that I had, one of the parents actually used that to me and said that she had to use her white privilege when she had to go fight the school system, the Board of Education, that their child was the district that their child was in. She used that word because there wasn't enough being done to protect her child from some of the things that were going on at that particular school at that particular moment. So she used that that phrase, and I thought it was really appropriate. But anyway, so so even just denying the parents' denial that that even their privilege was not enough to protect their child. So when we talk about sometimes white parents sometimes often struggle with the reality that they cannot protect children from racism or isolation or maybe even trauma. They also may also confront the possibility that that their own lack of awareness may have contributed to some of the pain that their child goes through, if that makes sense. And then you talk about anger. You know, some parents may ignore the issues and become angry with those who challenge, you know, their idea of a perfect image of their adoption story. And so that's another kind of anger that they may go through, but they also may treat other adults who speak out as ungrateful or dismissive of their perspectives. So Cristell will talk about the other two stages here, and then we can move on.
So with bargaining, that's where I start to see the parents accepting some of the experiences that maybe they didn't initially. Yet again, it may be kind of back and forth of, yes, I see some adoptees are experiencing this, but my family didn't, like my child isn't going through this hardship. And it's just trying to hold on to kind of that perfect image that they had initially. And again, some of the things may not have actually impacted their child, some of them may have, but still kind of going back and forth of minimizing it or accepting it for other people rather than for their own experience and for their child. With the depression, it's kind of that ongoing thing too. And of course, all of these can be ongoing as they experience the grief. But the depression of just losing that perfect image, of recognizing that their child is having all of these hardships and maybe that they don't know how to help, right? With the video that we showed at the beginning of the presentation, the mom is talking about, there are some things that she couldn't go through with her child. And she saw the benefit of having biological mom as part of the child's life to be able to relate on some of the things that she didn't. And she was still there for her kid. But it was just, it takes something to be able to just let that go, and totally normal to feel sad about it and feel upset. And just that maybe even going back to the sadness of, we could have done this earlier, or we could have addressed it, or we could have gotten support. Why didn't we get support? Kind of maybe that hopelessness about it. And again, all of that can be ongoing. With the acceptance, we're going to see more and more work that the family puts into working through their idea of the perfect image, working through identifying support systems and just resources that the family can have. And even finding a therapist who they feel comfortable with, that they know can address this directly on top of other mental health struggles that they may have, or whether it's residential treatment or just having support at school, just having all of that kind of full circle around the child and their family that they need. That's what's going to be going to that acceptance and continuing to go through the process of maybe something comes up and that makes us really angry again, or that makes us go into that depression again. But again, coming back to the acceptance and now being able to kind of take more action to those next steps that will help the adoptee and the parents.
Yeah. I will just add this to that last part there, is that this stage, acceptance, is unattainable if the parents do not embrace change, do not recognize that they need to change, and they have to buy into this whole process, right? Wholeheartedly. They cannot just give us give the acknowledgement that they understand. They have to really do the work. Okay. So without that, they can't reach acceptance, is what I'm trying to say. So, okay. All right. So we're getting into some of the meat of this presentation. And this is what we want to do. We want to help bridge the gap. So Cristell and I are just going to kind of go through these, and we're going to just kind of talk about it. So meaning for parents, do your own work before and during and after. And so what that means is that you got to seek out real life experiences of people who've been through it, who've lived who've lived the life, who can help be a mentor or be a mirror for your child. So making sure that you look at yourself and make sure that you're able, willing, and desire to really learn about why you're who you are, what you want, and how you're going to go about it.
With learning the child's needs, with this one, what comes to mind for me is being able to address the questions that the child may have. As we know, more in the earlier childhood, not so much when they're infants, is when the harder questions start to come up. And even with the question or the statement that the kids may be getting about, you don't look like your parents, it'd be great if you already had that discussion with the kids before they get that from peers at home, peers at school, or just in the community. With the question that one of Reggie's clients had to mom of, when is my skin going to turn white like yours? Those are things that came up, and she was probably caught off guard, but thinking about how to respond to the child will be most important. And that's what being their safe base is. Not invalidating it, just addressing it because it is what it is. And just being able to come back to having those discussions anytime that it comes up, or maybe even being the one to bring it up so that they know that they are able to do that with the parents, or again, if you're part of the support system, being a person watching the presentation, just being willing to have those difficult conversations. That's what being their safe base is. If not, then they're going to seek that out elsewhere, and they may find it in additional support, but just knowing that that's a role that you're taking on will be really helpful to them.
And seeking out individuals with lived experiences. What I see here is really what we're talking about is just mirrors. Being able to find people who your children can identify with, kind of like that ghost kingdom kind of thing. Successful people who look like them. People who maybe even can talk to you about how you can improve the way that you look at culture and identity in ways that maybe you've never thought about. So, like for instance, like being a part of a presentation like this, like there's so much out there that maybe people are not aware of, that don't come easily to them. You have to really seek it out versus sit back and because virtue of you having a child that doesn't look like you, people will come to you. That's not how it works. You have to really seek these things out because there is a lot of support out there. There are things that we can do as adoptive parents to help kind of bridge that gap. So I think that's what that's talking about.
Yeah. And continuing with the mirrors, sometimes it may be just having your child be involved in whatever they were going to be involved in anyway, but having those mirrors be a part of it. A family that I worked with, they are part of a religion, and the youth group that child was a part of, they had two. And it just so happened that one of them had a youth leader who is Black and the other one wasn't. I'm not sure what race they were, but child is Black. And so parents decided, typically just based on like the way things were lined up at church, you would go with this first one. But just because we know that it'd be helpful for you to have your mirror, we're going to have you go with the other group. And kiddo loved it. And it was just one of those, maybe we say little things that can be really impactful for the kid.
Mm-hmm. And then, as far as, providers, making sure that we do, when we're looking at like therapists or even doctors or even, maybe social workers or caseworkers or, people who who have background and some lived experiences. Those kind of people tend to really, really understand the nuances that may be going on with your child may open up more readily to them because maybe they feel a connection to them. Um, and so being able to understand just those kind of things, and there's sometimes, the people with lived experiences know how to connect with your child because maybe they've grown up with some of the same issues that your child has had. Um, so that's the other thing. That parents can do.
Yeah. We already talked a little bit about this earlier, but just, knowing what different needs the child may have. And if we're talking about specifically um, Black girls, just understanding that their hair is their crown and it's very, very important and it needs different care than other type of hair. So just making sure that that's being provided. And I'm going to go through some of the other ones, Reggie, just because I think we've already touched on them a little bit, just as far as being able to be the safe base, but providing that platform for your child to be able to process their feelings, um, making sure that it's not being invalidated. Even if we don't know how to respond, one of the things is noticing parents just like acknowledging, like, I don't know how to respond. And maybe you don't give a response in the moment. And just giving themselves some grace is really helpful too, knowing that they're going to mess up. Even if we think back to the video of the Modern Family clip, they said a lot of things and it becomes a funny thing, but just knowing that there are going to be some things that are said that are probably not the best things, and that's okay. You can come back and make it better and just make those repairs. And if anything, that'll actually also mirror to the children that something can be said, maybe not the right way the first time, but you can come back and manage that conflict or just rebuild that trust. And just because it ended in maybe not a great space or place in the conversation, it doesn't mean that it ends there. It just means that the conversation's not over and you can continue to be that safe base. So making sure that you're taking care of the needs of the child rather than expecting them to take care of your needs. If they're bringing up questions, they're just ready to address them. And if you're not, that's where doing your work comes in.
Yeah, I saw a comment, I forget who it's from, but they said, "Hey, don't forget about the sun. Sun's hair just as important." I mean, you're 100% right. Maybe that's why I don't have any right now, but yeah, I mean, it is. It is. It's just as hard to take care of, right? So finding barbers that understand that is really important. So thank you for that comment. Okay.
And then that's something that is often overlooked. So it's not just hair, but skin and everything else that,
Yes.
those
Thank you,
products
Linda. Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for adding those.
Yes.
We love that you're actually aware of it too.
Yes. Yes. It is. All of that is different for Black children. So we talked about bridging the gap for parents, and now we're going to talk about bridging the gap for mental health professionals because that's important as well. So one of the first things that I think is important for mental health therapists to understand is that thank you for that comment. Yes, appropriate products. We need to understand that there are some products out there that people just say can be used across all lines, and that's not true. That is not true. There's the ones that are appropriate for certain races and their body makeup. So thank you. But one of the first things that I really want us to understand is that too many times are the kids that come to us that have been adopted, even as mental health professionals, we kind of discard them as, they're not the expert. Well, they are the expert. we need to listen to them because we can learn from them. And so making sure that if you're a therapist, sitting down and understanding that the child is the expert, listen to them. And then as far as understanding what our own biases are, like sometimes we'll get a child in there, and I've seen this many times because of their behavior, they get misdiagnosed. They get misdiagnosed as, ODD, conduct disorder, RAD. And we need to understand some of the nuances that are at play here. Maybe there's a lot of things going on that drive those behaviors. And so what we have to do is understand what's first of all, what's the function of the behavior, and then what are they trying to say, right? So, and then Cristell, you can if you want
Yeah.
to identify.
As a mental health professional, again, I'm thinking back to my example of mom and daughter, when mom says, I'm so happy you're not blonde and blue-eyed. But just being able to recognize in that moment, or if you've gotten a comment similar to this or not, but just knowing, do I already have the motivation to seek out more training or just consult with other professionals to make sure I'm providing the services that my clients need or support that they need. And also looking into what's stopping you from being able to do that. But just continuing to have that, thankfully Reggie and I work very closely together. And so we're sometimes, the ones kind of not necessarily calling each other out, but maybe like checking and making sure that our biases are continuing to be addressed, that if I'm stumped with something, I come to him and vice versa on knowing how to address it. And we keep that motivation going. So I would recommend that you all find somebody like that in your support system too, or in your team that can continue that motivation for all of you guys, and then continue to seek out that education and trainings for your full team, or, just having somebody that you can always go to. And Reggie and I will have our contact information at the end of the presentation too. So I think you guys are also welcome to reach out to us if anything were to come up. We don't say we're experts. We just have worked with a lot of families who include a lot of transracial adoptees. So you're welcome to do that.
And again, 100% agree with Cristell in terms of just the making sure that we are keeping us as a safe base, but also I want to throw out there, what are we doing as mental health professionals to seek out education and trainings on our own, and becoming an adoption competent therapist. We'll have those slides here a little bit later, but I think that's really for mental health professionals. Those are the things that say, are we continuing to seek out educations and trainings, and are we committed to becoming competent with these kind of cases, and then how do we address the trauma of adoption? Are we doing the right things to do that? And Chris, I'll just finish out this slide and then we can go to the next one. But through looking at ACEs and losing a parent through separation and divorce, or even adoption, and then being able to just say how does attachment, the role does attachment play in this, and what about the neurobiology that contributes to the situation? And a lot of times we don't have a full medical history because these kids are maybe adopted at birth, and there's really not a whole lot that they know about the birth families. But being able to get some of that information is really, really, really helpful in understanding how we can kind of bridge that gap when it comes to us as therapists being competent all the way around, because that definitely can help us in our work with transracial adoptions.
So going into the trainings that we have found, this is something that Reggie and I think are signed up for now. But just to make sure that we're actually becoming competent, we have these two, which is case training for adoption competency and a school-based training too, because we know not everybody who comes to clinical track is a therapist. But we love that we have everybody. And so these are just some resources that we have. I'll let you add, Reggie, anything else that you have, but I really like these.
I still have to listen to this for 20 more minutes.
Yes. So this training has kind of the different levels of
I know, we've got to go to Walmart.
That we're able to take. Like there's a beginning section, the interns and maybe like therapists who are still working towards licensure can take. And then there's the two different areas after that for people who maybe are already working with them with transracial adoption families, and one that's more of like more of an expert that has more information on it too.
So I think now is a good time to play that video, just because it does explain a little bit, go into a little bit more detail about tag training, and then I think what we have to do is leave some time also for some questions. Okay, so let's go into this, and then let's.
Reggie, it's 4 minutes. Do we want to go into the next two and then questions?
Sure. Yeah, we can do that.
Make sure in case people do have questions, and if we don't, then we can come back to it.
Yeah.
For people to.
Oh yeah. I forgot about that. Go ahead.
Okay. So something else that we wanted to add, other than like the other bullet points that we had as far as how mental professionals can address this and how parents can too. These are some things that we've been able to do at Oasis to address some of the struggles that the families have. And it's definitely something that you all could take if you're working with transracial adoptees. And these are more direct interventions that we've been able to do in sessions. So in family sessions, some of them have been family sculptures, autobiographies, impact letters. I'll explain them a little bit more, but the family sculpture, I think people can do a little bit differently, and a lot can come from it. I've done this with just parents and child, and I've also done this with parent, child, and like 4 siblings. So it can be really, really fun. The way that I've done it is just asking each family member to take turns, literally placing each family member, like, if they're mannequins, how they see their family in their worst moment, in their best moment, and how they would like to see them in the future. So it really is impactful just because you get to see what each family member got to see in those different points of time. And every single family gets to feel whether that closeness or that distance that they're having as they're being placed by each family member. So that one has been a really great one to do. With autobiographies, sometimes the adoptees have actually been with their parents the whole time. But it's great to see them have kind of that say and be able to be provided that platform to share their perspective of what their adoption was like, or what their years growing up have been like. Impact letters are written by the parents, so they get to kind of share their opposite side of what it was like to become their parents and see them grow up, whether they've had struggles or have some highlights of some positive moments that they've had. Those are also really great. The web of connections, I couldn't really figure out how to name this one. I think there's a lot of different ways that you could call this, but with this, it's just been holding a ball of yarn and holding onto the string and passing it to different family members so that everybody gets to say, some positive moments or some feedback that they'd like to give, or maybe setting some boundaries. You can really do a lot with that. And that has been really great when including siblings, because sometimes they're a little bit more hesitant to share, or they're a little bit more shy because maybe they're not working with the therapist directly all the time. And it just, gives them one time to say something and then they can pass it on. So it's not too deep for them right away. With love language and attachment styles, of course, that's great to explore with the individual. Again, going through the autobiography, that's often something that I look at in individual sessions plus the family session, so they get to read it to parents and siblings, also exploring their attachment styles, also looking at their core values, which they can share with everybody else later. And again, if at least in our setting, because we're a residential program, they don't get to interact with their siblings all the time because they're not living at home, but they can write letters. And sometimes that even is a little bit more comfortable to start off with, because having a full-on conversation would be a little bit uncomfortable depending on where they're at and if they've had conflict. But the letters themselves can be just a short paragraph, and it can be like, hey, how you doing? I learned this today. Like, what did you do today? And that's more of a positive experience that maybe they had before when they were at home. So starting off small, really great. We'll turn it back to that slide when we get to questions. But then the last thing that we had were some additional resources. So a lot of what we referenced was from the book, What White Parents Should Know About Transracial Adoption by Melissa Guida Richards. And this website right here is actually her podcast that she does with her mom. So that's something that we were able to find and something that you guys can also look into. Again, the adoptees are the experts. And this is something that we really love, that at least the books that we have on here and the podcast that we have, they're led by transracial adoptees. And so, you know, we get to share this information, but I think it's also great for you all to look into these and get more direct experiences from them and feedback from them. So.
Great, great. So, okay, so I see a lot of comments about the trainings, and I'm so grateful that was it Tamara that made that comment. I've spoken with Tamara. I believe that's her name.
Hi, it's Tara, Reggie. That's
Tara.
okay.
Tara, do you want to speak a little bit more on this, Tara? Because I think that that you have some great insight to this. So.
Yeah, I obviously am a huge proponent of TAC, and what Reggie and Cristell were telling us about, you know, trying to make sure that your team gets the competency training that you need to be able to really effectively work with people who've been impacted by adoption, kinship, or foster care. When I was looking for that training for my own team, we found TAC and thought, and there weren't any providers in Utah, so we thought, let's bring it to Utah. And we're approved as a training site, and we have had 2 cohorts complete the training so far. It's a little bit of a commitment. It's an 11-month training. We meet once a month for a full day at our agency's offices in Salt Lake City. But anybody who's interested, I'm happy to send you a flyer and more information. If you want to either private message me your email or the best way to get that to you, I'm happy to do that. We begin our next training in November. I think we only have 1 or 2 slots left, but after that, we're planning on running it annually as we go forward. So,
Tara, if you want me to, if you want to send me information, I can send that out with the certificates.
Kelly, that's awesome. Let's do that. I'll send it straight to Kelly, and then Kelly will send it out to everyone.
Perfect. And if you're not going to be getting the CEU certificate, make sure you email me and tell me that you want that, and I'll get it to you. So
thank you, Kelly. Thanks, Reggie.
Tara, thank you so much. So, I don't know if we need to roll that video, just because I think that Tara has kind of summarized what was in the video, but certainly we want to take some questions. Tara, if you don't mind, if you hopping on and or answering some of these questions, since I think a lot of it is going to be about the training. So if everybody's okay, should we just open it up to questions?
That works.
There is one in the Q&A. Maybe we could start with that, and then as people send more, we can go with it.
Okay.
They're saying Black families adopting a white child seems extremely unusual. Do you have an example of this and any comments on that experience?
Wow, that's a great question, and I do not. And so, one of the things that I said earlier is questions is why is that not a more of a common thing? And I believe that white Black families do see race. They do see color. They do understand the things that the world how it is today. And this is just my opinion. I just feel like they choose to not expose like a child to those kind of things. That's just Reggie's opinion. So, but I love the question. I don't have an example of that. I don't know, but maybe somebody does.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, we know it happens, obviously. And I know it came up when we were looking into putting the presentation together. But yeah, no, but at least directly haven't had that.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
I don't have any in the Q&A, but if anybody wants to speak up and ask questions, now's the time.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, it looks like most of them were more of comments, and we certainly appreciate all the comments. So I guess we can end unless there's other things that we're not forgetting or that we're forgetting. Okay.
Yeah, just appreciate everybody's input. That was great.
If people do have questions later, do you have a slide that shows how to get a hold of you, or?
Yes, we just didn't get to.
Yeah, okay. There we go.
Okay. Okay. Thanks everyone for your attendance here. If you need to get a hold of Crystal or I, there's our emails. Kelly also has our information. Tara is again a great source of information for the training. I've talked to her. It's probably been a year since I've talked to her, but she's the one that kind of pointed me in the direction of the training, and because I think that is the biggest thing that we want to do is help our therapists become competent in adoptions, and it's a great resource. So I hope that you all can go through that training. So
I agree. I know Tara well. It's been a little while since I've seen you, Tara. It's so great to see you on here, but yeah, she's amazing. So great resource.
Awesome.
Thank you. Oh, this has been I've got notes. I'm just so excited. I have learned so much today, and I think it spurred me on to want to learn more. And I think that's what's so great about these trainings is that it kind of gives you a little bit enough to just, okay, now I really want to delve in, you know. So I really appreciate it. Tons of great comments and thank yous, you know, in our chat. We so appreciate. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, there are a couple of questions in the Q&A, and so we've got a few minutes. Let's get them.
Okay, sure.
It's from the same person. She says, "What about elderly adopting, and what is the cutoff age? Do you guys know about that?"
Ooh, I don't.
Okay.
We've had a wide range just with the families we've worked with, but yeah, I don't know that there's.
I don't know that either. That's a great question. If anybody has the answer to that, speak up. I'm not sure. I know that there are a lot of couples who are a little bit older and adopt, but I don't know if there's a cutoff age there. So
I do know the answer to this one. There is actually not a cutoff age for older folks to adopt. It is about health. And so as long as a doctor says that the person is healthy and has no concerns about the adoption, it would not hinder a home study being approved.
Good to know.
Oh, great. That's awesome.
And that makes total sense, because you may be younger, but not really able health-wise to be able to do it. So yeah, that makes sense. So great. Thanks, Tara. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the other end, there is a cutoff age. You have to be at least 10 years older than the person you are adopting. And I've never seen anyone being 10 years older, but we had one that was 14 years older than the child they adopted.
Wow.
It is a struggle, I think, for someone being that young in doing an adoption, or it can be a struggle.
Right. So close to that age of that child. Yeah. I love that. I'm so glad you said that because I haven't ever thought of that. So yeah, that makes total sense.
Awesome.
Great stuff. Okay.
Time to
Is
watch
there a
that video?
I don't think there's a cutoff age for a person to be adopted for but kids tend to really, really low once they're 8 years old and older than that. Sometimes it seems like it's just even not happening at all, but it's just really rare.
Yeah. Which is sad.
No, I don't think they're coming anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have time to watch the video you were going to show us?
For sure.
Sure, we can do that. Yeah.
NTI School-Based Mental Health Professionals Training is a 15-hour web-based training that provides the foundational knowledge, values, and skills school counselors, social workers, psychologists, and therapists need to effectively support the mental health and well-being of children experiencing foster care, adoption, kinship care, and significant separation and loss of birth, family, community, and culture.
This training is important for school-based mental health professionals as it gives them a better understanding of the complex mental health needs of students experiencing adoption, foster care, kinship care. It also provides strategies and skills to help kids who are experiencing trauma, grief and loss, identity, and attachment challenges.
These challenges that they have are related to the trauma that they've experienced because of that first separation and the grief and loss, and sometimes also other trauma that they have experienced after being adopted, before being adopted as well, that they might not be aware is actually impacting their learning capabilities in the classroom. Sometimes our kids are mislabeled or overdiagnosed. And so to really parse out what's going on with our children and how to properly support them through the trauma and help them navigate the trauma that they have experienced and are experiencing, school-based mental health professionals really need to take this training.
This training will really help give a different way to examine our work. It will give us a different opportunity to engage, assess, and intervene when a child comes to us in need. It will give us an opportunity to learn how to better connect with our students and how to better support them as well. And it goes a little bit further than like support, but really just a holistic understanding and really looking at just the unique needs and challenges and how what may present as defiance could then be presented as like they have a need for control, like understanding those core issues in adoption. So underneath some of these behaviors is loss and grief and trauma and guilt and shame. And when we take this training, we really can understand how it's impacted or how it manifests in children's behaviors.
I think that it's crucial for school-based mental health professionals to take this training because as a former foster child going in through the public system, I struggled a lot with mental health. I recently went to go visit my 6th grade math teacher, and when I told him that I was going through the foster care system at the time that I was in his classroom, he was very surprised to find this out. He also informed me that the school wasn't required to tell him that I was in foster care, so that also became an extra barrier for him to be able to support me in the classroom.
Having been a school-based therapist for 4 years, this training would have been very helpful. Had I known the different issues, the very complex issues that are involved in working with this population, I would have been better equipped with the skills, the knowledge, the strategies to support students going through trauma, to support students who are experiencing that deep grief and sense of loss. I would have had more skills and knowledge around identity and how my students were kind of viewing themselves and kind of working their way towards figuring out their own identity. And so this training would have been really, really helpful in that I would have been better equipped. I would have had those tools, the skills, the strategies to support my students better.
All right. So yeah, so what a great resource for all of us, and we can't wait to see all the how it can improve not only your people that you're working with, but also you as an individual. I think those are things that we can take away from. So well, I tell you what, I'll speak for myself and let Cristell speak. It's been a pleasure, and thank you, Kelly, for setting this up. Kelly and Gabby, thank you for setting this up. And I hope that we've achieved our objective, which is to make sure that you walk away here with some knowledge that can help bridge the gap and help you as a therapist understand and help parents understand all the nuances that go into transracial adoption. So Cristell, I'll let you kind of have the last word.
Oh, just thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Kelly and Gabby, for having us. We were super excited. So I just love the CJC and everything, and you guys know that. So it was really fun to get to come back and do this with you guys.
Yeah, we love you guys. You're amazing. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us. This was just so great. What a great group, and the comments and the sharing. It was just amazing. I'm gonna remind you to grab that link. It's in the chat. So get that certificate for your CEUs. Make sure you get that, not forget before you log off. And if there are a couple of questions in the chat, if you guys want to answer that, but I'm just gonna kind of officially end our training for those who need to get going. If you have a couple of minutes to answer these 2 questions, then we can do that.
I muted myself, but yes, I don't know if you need to take off, Reggie, but I can stay on.
Yeah, I do.
So for those who need to leave, thank you. We'll see you next month. And if you want to stay on for the last little minute, then welcome to do that.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Reggie. Let's see. It's in the Q&A. The first one, I don't know if you want me to read it. The first one says, any suggestions as to how to open the dialogue with clients? I have 2 African-American adopted clients and I am white. Is there a good way to bring this up?
Yeah, so again, like those autobiographies have been a really good way to address it because it's just, they'll say, a lot of the kids will start off with like, oh, well, I was born here. I'm like, great, is that where, like you stayed, or like, did you move, or like, what about your adoptive parents? And sometimes, again, it's just bringing it up directly because you already have some background information anyway. So it's like, hey, and you're adopted, right? So let's add that in there. Sometimes just those direct questions can be really helpful. And sometimes even acknowledging, like, hey, I'm white. I know I may not totally get some of these things, and that's okay, but know that I'll do my work outside of our sessions. Can be really reassuring to the clients. My therapist is white and I love her. So, and I can tell you even from our first session to now, I can tell the work that she has done because, earlier on I would explain a few things to her about just being Hispanic, and now some of the things she'll just nod and like, I'm like, oh, you know what I'm talking about. Great. We can move forward without me needing to give you background info.
Right. I think just a little 2 cents of me. I mean, with any subject, I think just opening it up and letting that person know that you are open to discussing that creates a safe place for them, hopefully to then, give you more information or ask questions or whatever that is. They know you're open to discussing it. So I love that. And then the second one is, do you know of any places where there's training for potential adoptive parents who are interested in transracial adoption?
I want to say, and I don't know if I think Tara had to go. I want to say that the tax training that we had, there's also a section for parents.
Okay.
So again, there's like different sections of like just beginners, more in depth, and then more like experts in the training. So different levels of just information that they have. But I believe there's also some information for parents. So I would go into that same one.
Yeah, she's probably a real good resource.
Yeah.
To ask that question too. Yeah. Definitely. And I will get that sent out. So, yeah, I don't see any more questions. So we'll let everybody go, and grab the link. I'll leave it open for just a few minutes so that, you know, you can get on or you know, fill that out. But hopefully we'll see you next month and enjoy the fall weather. Yay! Thanks, Crystal. It's so good to see you.
Thank you, Crystal.